Okay, let's dive in. We all know digital technology is, well, everywhere. It's just part of life now. But how is it actually changing something like fashion design, which feels so
Filigree.
right,
Right.
so creative?
It's a great question because, yeah, fashion seems all about touch, texture, how things feel on your body, stuff you wear out in the real world.
Unlikely.
But
Yeah.
this recent study we're looking at shows that digital influence is, well, it's huge, really profound.
Absolutely. And for this deep dive, we're getting a look at that influence through a really objective lens, which is cool. We're digging into an academic study, Lee and Sue, just out this year, 2024.
Mm,
And what they did was pretty smart. They used big data analysis, specifically text mining,
right.
on just tons of global fashion trend reports,
Yeah.
from the big agencies like WGSN, FashionNet, covering 2020 right through to next year, 2025.
Yeah. And their whole goal, which is kind of our goal now too, was to get past just gut feelings,
Yeah.
use the data to see exactly how digital tech is shaping trends.
Everything, colors, fabrics.
Prints, styles, the whole look. Yeah. So this study basically gives us a data-backed shortcut to, understanding this digital revolution happening on the runway and really everywhere else.
And they were thorough. They looked at the key words, how often they showed up.
The TF, yeah, term frequency.
Right. And how important they were in context, that TF-IDF score, and how words connected, like a network.
Network analysis, Concore analysis for clustering.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's a robust approach. It means we're looking at what the data from industry experts is saying, not just someone's opinion.
Okay, so let's jump in. What did the data show overall? What's the big picture?
Well, the big picture is really clear. The conversation in trend forecasting, it's dominated by this idea of merging worlds. The words that popped up most often were super direct. Digital, world new, reality, future, and technology.
Wow, okay, that sets the stage right away. It tells you forecasters aren't just thinking about digital tools, they're talking about a whole shift in the world itself.
Exactly. And the study points out related terms like space, between, and physical.
Which suggests
It highlights this idea that the old lines, between time and space, they're kind of blurring, creating what the reports are actually calling a new reality.
a new reality. Interesting.
And what's really significant is that the word reality itself, it had a really high importance score in the analysis, right up there with digital.
So it's not just virtual stuff. It's about how tech is fundamentally changing our actual physical reality and how fashion fits into that.
That's exactly it. It's not just theoretical. The data shows specific technologies are really driving this.
Okay, like what tech terms really stood out?
Well, the study found lots of mentions of metaverse, AI, Roblox, 3D, and avatar.
Makes sense.
And interestingly, metaverse, AI, and avatar weren't just common. They were weighted as really significant influences. The forecasters see these specific things having a major impact.
Yeah, I mean, they're literally places where people are creating new identities, new spaces. And it's not just the tech itself, right? The study found digital culture is a big influence too.
Oh, absolutely. Keywords like game, sports, online, they were prominent.
Right.
The study even mentions a WGSN trend title from back in 2021, Gamescape.
Gamescape, that says it all, doesn't it? How the look and feel of online gaming, digital sports is just bleeding into fashion inspiration.
Totally. And tying this all together are these bigger ideas about where we're going, future, technology, innovation.
Yeah.
But, the data shows it's a complex future they're seeing.
How so? Complex in what way?
Well, alongside all the futuristic stuff, sustainable shows up really strongly, very prominent.
Okay, great.
But then you also see these contrasting visions, like the data picks up the term dystopia, which is pretty somber,
Wow.
but then also a more hopeful digital future, like one WGSN called Digitopia for 2025. So the analysis is capturing this really complex, sometimes even conflicting outlook that forecasters are identifying.
Okay, so the big takeaway from the overall data. Fashion trends are just deeply tangled up with this emerging digital reality, influenced by specific tech, digital culture, and this future view that's got hope, innovation, but also concerns like sustainability, maybe even dystopia.
Exactly. So now the question is, how does that big picture translate into the actual clothes, the
Right.
design elements?
Let's unpack that. Where better to start than color? What did the data say about color palettes?
It showed this really interesting duality, a clear coexistence of inspiration from nature, but also from the digital world.
Nature and digital side by side.
Yeah, and that contrast seems key. Bright colors were weighted heavily in the findings, but so were black and dark. The data really points to this deliberate use of contrast as a major trend in color.
Okay, so brights and darks often used together for impact. And where does nature fit into that palette?
Well, nature itself was highly significant for color trends, according to the analysis. You see specific natural colors mentioned a lot, like green connected to forests, wetlands, blue, cool, aquatic shades, suggesting, sea and water.
And the earthier tones, too.
Yeah, the subtler ones from landscapes like deserts, pastel, neutral, calm, mid-tone, brown, gray. All those showed up.
Okay, but then how does the digital side come in? Does it blend?
Oh yeah, that's where it gets really interesting. The digital influence isn't just separate, it mixes in fascinating ways. The study found trend reports using these new words for colors, neologisms, that literally merge digital terms with nature.
Like what?
Things like digital lavender, electric kumquat, future dusk.
Whoa! Digital lavender. That sounds surreal. Like colors you could only really see on a screen.
Exactly, it captures that feeling. And then, of course, there are the colors that seem purely inspired by the digital realm itself.
Right, the really vibrant ones.
Yes, the data pointed to vivid colors, often described with terms like crimson, and this one's great, dopamine bright.
Dopamine bright. I love that.
And that one, dopamine bright, was actually statistically very important, according to the analysis. These are those bold, almost joyful colors you see in online spaces, digital graphics. And within that, the study noted pink tones were particularly common. Pink, red, crimson, pink flash.
So a lot of intense, saturated color. And what else? Any other color trends?
Yeah. Rounding out the palette were futuristic tones like monochrome, silver, and neon.
Okay. So the data is really showing this deliberate mix. You've got nature-inspired colors, you've got intense digital brights, sometimes subtle, sometimes clashing, used in contrast. It creates a palette that reflects this merged, sometimes kind of weird digital mood.
That's it, exactly. So when you, the listener, look at fashion colors now,
yeah,
you see that blend, maybe a really vibrant artificial pink next to a deep forest green or a neon accent on something earthy. You're seeing this tension, this conversation between the digital and the physical playing out.
Fascinating. Okay, moving from color to what's on the surface, prints and graphics, what did the data highlight there?
The findings really emphasize the diverse motive, the inspiration and the different technique used to create various effect.
And I'm guessing nature pops up again?
Big time. Just like with color, nature is a primary source. Floral and nature themes were statistically very significant. So you see motifs like floral, landscape, animal, ocean, water mentioned frequently.
But probably not just like straightforward floral prints, right? Given the digital theme.
Exactly right. The key insight here from the study is that these nature motifs are almost always digitally reinterpreted, altered somehow.
How so?
Using techniques like applying a digital filter or pixel effects, 3D rendering, or using methods like ombre, camouflage, geometric, tidy, psychedelic, applying those to natural images to give them this artificial, digitally enhanced kind of mood. It's nature, but seen through a digital lens.
So like maybe a flower that looks like it's made of pixels or a tie-dye that looks kind of glitchy, almost like a screen error.
Exactly like that. Or maybe camouflage prints that morph into abstract digital patterns instead of leaves and twigs. The data also showed other really strong inspirations for prints. Game was highly important.
From video games?
Yeah, drawing directly from digital game imagery. Stripe was also significant, but again, often reinterpreted digitally. And the study noted themes like surreal, abstract, virtual, future, fantasy, universe, and AI. These were actually statistically more important for prints than just how often they appeared. Meaning the forecasters see these specific themes, fantasy, universe, AI, as really core drivers for graphic inspiration, even if they weren't the most frequent words overall.
That makes total sense. Those concepts are inherently digital or futuristic, so these prints are basically telling stories about blending realities, using tech to twist natural forms or just pulling imagery straight from virtual worlds.
Yeah, exactly. They're like visual narratives. Think about how you might see landscape photos digitally distorted into something surreal. Or patterns clearly inspired by game aesthetics, but made wearable.
Okay, so we've got color, we've got prints. Let's move on to the actual fabric, textiles. How is digital tech showing up there, according to the data?
Well, the number one keyword in the textile findings, most prominent and also statistically very important, was recycling.
Wow, okay, that's huge. A really direct link between these digital trends and environmental thinking.
It really is. And it connects straight to that focus on sustainable practices we saw earlier. Keywords like certified were key.
Certified.
Yeah, linked to specific international textile standards like DECIS, BCI, GRS. Those are independent standards that guarantee things like organic cotton or better cotton farming practices or recycled content. It shows this clear link to nature, eco-efforts addressing waste, and environmental protection in how fabrics are actually made.
So a lot of the innovation in textiles driven by digital trends is actually focused on being greener, but it's also about new technical stuff too, right? New possibilities.
Oh, definitely. Keywords like texture, yarn, and technical were frequent. It points to the importance of material science development. Digital tech is enabling new surface effect, new texture, new surface finishes.
Like what kind of effects?
The study highlights shine as a statistically important surface effect, along with texture, ombre, jacquard, stripe, often created through advanced yarn types or weaving and knitting techniques. The source material even mentions creating surfaces with a liquid sheen or liquid viscosity.
Liquid sheen, like fabric that looks almost wet or fluid.
Yeah, suggesting fabrics that look almost digital themselves are constantly shifting. Really futuristic stuff.
And what about how the fabrics feel? Is comfort still important?
Very much so. The data also showed a focus on the tactile side, with keywords like soft, comfort, smooth, and tactility appearing often.
And the materials themselves, still cotton and polyester.
Yeah, traditional materials like cotton and silk are there, alongside synthetics like polyester, jersey, nylon. But the strong connections found in the data really reinforce that the emphasis is on using these in a recycling context or a sustainable, bio-based form.
Got it. So digital tech and textiles isn't just about like flashy new surfaces, though there is that. It's fundamentally driving innovation in the materials themselves, how they're made, with this really strong push towards sustainability and creating interesting new textures, often futuristic ones.
It's really about using technology to be more responsible environmentally while also creating new sensory experiences with the fabric itself.
Makes sense. Okay, last piece, style and details. The actual silhouette, the cut, the construction.
Yep.
What did the data reveal about digital's influence here?
Well, the study found significant keywords like future, technical, and composition. But interestingly, the word game scored even higher in importance than composition when it came to style trends.
Game influencing style. How does that play out? What does that look like?
It points strongly towards styles that work for gaming, yes, but also styles that bridge the virtual and real worlds. There's a huge focus on comfort and wearability. Keywords like soft, comfort, lightweight, stretch, body, and also protective.
Protective, like armor.
Maybe not full armor. More likely functional protection for active lifestyles. Lifestyles that might span both physical activity and, potentially digital engagement.
Yeah.
Think about versatility too. Layered and modular items were key trends.
Modular, like pieces you can add or remove.
Exactly. Things you can mix and match easily. Adapt the outfit.
And what about specific details? What's standing out there?
Cutout details were particularly significant in the data analysis, actually scored higher in importance than layering.
Cutouts. Interesting. In this sort of protective, futuristic context.
Yeah, it's an interesting contrast. Other key details included seam details, trimming, pocket design, and panel construction.
And the overall shapes.
Yeah.
Silhouettes.
The data showed contrast coexisting again. You see keywords like simple and minimal right alongside volume, exaggerated, oversized, glamorous, and bold. So it's a mix. Pared down, functional forms, and really dramatic shapes living together.
And like the other elements, a blending of different influences, old and new.
Absolutely. The study found classic styles, like tailored pieces, are being combined with sportswear. The network analysis showed links there.
So tailored jacket with track pants, that kind of vibe.
Potentially, yeah. The data highlights that styles are becoming much more versatile, often blending elements you wouldn't expect, offering functionality and comfort for lives that operate across different realities online or offline. The focus seems to be on adaptable, comfortable, yet sometimes visually striking looks.
That really paints a clear picture across all the design elements: color, print, textile, style. But the study went a step further, right? They did this grouping analysis, con/slar, to find the deeper connections, clustering these concepts. What did those clusters reveal about the underlying directions?
Yeah, they grouped all these findings into 4 main clusters, and these really reveal the deeper currents, the main directions driving this digital technology-inspired fashion.
Okay, let's hear them. What's the first cluster?
Cluster 1 is titled Human and Nature-Oriented Design in the Digital World as a New Reality.
Okay, bit of a mouthful, but clear.
Yeah. This cluster basically groups all those key words about the blurring line between virtual and reality. Digital, future, world, new, reality, virtual, metaverse, 3D, AI, avatar, game. It captures that core idea. The distinction is fading. We're in a new digital age. Tech is central.
So it's about designing fashion for this new blended reality. But what's the key insight, the sort of twist within that cluster?
This is where it gets really interesting. Because despite all the high-tech words, the core motif identified in this cluster is actually the essence of natural and human emotions.
Really? Human emotions and nature in the digital cluster.
Exactly. Keywords like nature and emotion are central here. The study really emphasizes that the focus isn't just on creating perfect digital forms. It's on designing for the human experience within this new reality. Designs need to evoke feelings. They need to blend the tech advancements with elements drawn from humanity, from nature, but maybe reinterpreted in a futuristic way.
So it's about using tech to inspire wonder, maybe warmth, not just cold efficiency.
Precisely. It's designing for a new digital reality, yes, but one that's still fundamentally rooted in human feeling and our connection to the natural world. That's cluster one.
Fascinating. Okay, cluster two.
Cluster two is new textiles reflecting digital technology. This circles back to what we discussed about textiles. It focuses on how digital tech enables new surface effect, texture, development, finishes, grouping terms like ombre, stripe, jacquard, shine.
And the point here is using these new textile capabilities to kind of bridge different worlds, visually, maybe even how they feel.
Exactly. It's about blending inspirations, taking things from nature, classic styles, vintage, craft, but giving them a distinct digital touch.
Oh.
Through effects described as abstract, geometric, camouflage, universe, metallic, sophisticated. The study gives great examples like taking classic camouflage but rendering it with textures that look like swamps or digital noise.
Okay.
Or tie-dye patterns that look more like water ripples seen through a filter. Reimagining stripes with dusty textures or patterns that look like magnified cells, creating surfaces that seem to flow, like that liquid sheen idea, or have layered, shifting colors, drawing inspiration from space, but making it digital.
So it's really about making the digital feel tangible, creating fabrics that are interesting to look at and touch that connect these different worlds.
Yes, exactly. Making the digital feel palpable, dynamic through the textiles themselves.
Got it. Cluster 3 is sustainable design technology. This one seems pretty straightforward from the name.
It is, and it's a really powerful finding that it emerged as its own distinct cluster. It strongly links digital advancement directly with environmental responsibility. It groups keywords like recycling, functional, sustainable, eco, certified, waste, and protection.
So the study is saying sustainability isn't just like a side goal. It's seen as crucial to digital progress in fashion.
Absolutely. The core idea here is using advanced technology to, as the study puts it, work with nature for sustainable practices, implementing responsible materials and methods.
Like the recycled materials and natural dyes we talked about.
Yeah, using recycled materials, natural dyes, reusing waste and materials, or dyeing. But critically, the study also highlights how digital tools themselves are used to cut waste in the design and production process.
How?
Citing things like computer-aided design programs, 3D sampling, which reduces physical prototypes, and seamless knitting technology that minimizes yarn waste.
Ah, right. That's a really important point. Digital isn't just about making virtual clothes. It's about using tech to make the physical process of creating clothes more sustainable.
It represents a significant shift that the data picked up. Moving away from the old model where technology often harmed nature, towards current digital trends that prioritize coexistence and protection, using tech innovation for greener design and production.
Okay, that's huge. Finally, cluster 4, new utility fashion in the digital space.
Right. This cluster centers on that intersection of the virtual and real-world sports and game environments. It groups keywords like sportswear, smart, but also minimal, modular, utility, hyper, and even dystopia and past.
Okay, so fashion designed for this active lifestyle that's increasingly digital. Sportswear for gamers, kind of?
Kind of, yeah, but broader. It's about creating styles that work well in both virtual and real worlds, blending smart tech and functionality, maybe embedded tech, maybe just highly functional design with influences from the past, retro moods, maybe even those darker dystopian themes. It's sportswear designed to perform and look good whether you're physically active or engaging virtually.
And this ties into the versatility thing again.
Yes, very strongly. The cluster includes minimal, modular and utility designs, things that make it easy to mix and match different garments and styles.
Like the tailored plus sportswear idea.
Exactly. Or the emergence of what the study called hyper-digital uniforms, looks that clearly reflect game themes or sport aesthetics, but are styled for everyday adaptable wear.
So this cluster really shows that future utility wear, sportswear, is becoming incredibly versatile. Functional, yes, but also designed for these fluid lives we lead, moving between digital and physical spaces and encouraging creative, sometimes unexpected combinations.
It's fashion really adapting to how active and multidimensional our lives are now.
This study, using all that data, it really pulls back the curtain, doesn't it? And it seems valuable beyond just spotting trends.
Yeah, the researchers point out it suggests a new way to use big data for design research itself. It offers guidance for fashion education too, how to teach students to blend creativity, tech, but also values like, humaneness and nature connection. And obviously gives practical direction for designers, entrepreneurs, anyone working in the industry.
It really shows that digital tech's influence isn't superficial. It's deeply woven into the fabric of fashion, affecting everything from the big ideas down to the tiniest design detail.
Absolutely.
So wrapping up this deep dive, we've seen how digital technology isn't just something happening to fashion. And it's definitely not just about virtual clothes. The data makes it clear. It's fundamentally reshaping the colors we see, the prints on fabrics, the materials themselves, and the actual styles we choose to wear in the physical world.
Yeah, it's a really dynamic, complex picture that this data analysis reveals. You've got future tech merging with deep human emotions, this reconnection with nature but in new ways, a huge drive towards sustainability, and this demand for versatile, useful clothing for lives lived across multiple realities.
So considering this really fascinating blend that the study found, this mix of digital innovation, human feeling, environmental responsibility, and that need for utility, what does that suggest about what you, our listener, might value in fashion in the years ahead, whether just in your avatar or yourself?